Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. One of the great joys of my life now is getting to be a grandparent, and I do childcare 1 day a week now. And I was up there this week, and I had to take a journey. I had to take a trip with a 4-year-old granddaughter while the 1-year-old was taking her nap. And she said, "Grandma, we got to go downstairs and take a trip." And I said, "Okay, where are we going to go?" And she said, "Well, we're gonna take the Honeys." That's her name for her dolls. "We're going to take the Honeys and we're going to go to Australia." And I said, "Oh, good. I've never been to Australia." So I said, "How are we going to get there?" "Well, first we got to get on the rocket ship because we live in outer space." Now, there's a great journey of imagination, isn't it? It's wonderful, the journeys of imagination that our young people have. But if you notice today's gospel, it doesn't open with a fantasy. It opens not once upon a time, but in the time of King Herod, in a specific time and place in history, and God is acting in history in real ways. And we're supposed to wake up and pay attention the way the wise men paid attention to the star. When I woke up this morning, as I was walking downstairs, we have there's a great big window on the landing, and I looked out at the sky. I don't know if any of you saw it, but there's a triangular formation right now between this little sliver of a crescent moon, the planet Saturn, and a bright star. And that was the first thing I saw this morning when I got up, that brightness in the sky, and it reminded me of how God got the attention of the wise men of this. There's some great gift. There's something amazing happening around you. Pay attention. Who were these wise men? We know that they really were the foreign scientists of their day. That's right. They were the scientists, the astronomers of their time, as best as astronomy was understood. And that was like my experience this morning, only with the naked eye, only with what they could see. Why should we care about these wise men, these scientists, these foreigners? What do they have to tell us? Usually we separate science from religion. Science is about the observation of data, about experimentation and measurable results. So many grams of sodium in a food, so many miles to a particular star. Religion, we say, is about beliefs, about faith and values like hope and love that may have effects in our lives, but we can't really measure, well, how much love did I get from that hug, right? But while science and religion have differences, they do have something in common. Sir Isaac Newton was watching and an apple fell from the tree, and he had that aha moment, a leap of imagination and insight that led him to develop the theory of gravity. Albert Einstein observed a passing train and watched time pass while traveling on a train, and then he had this aha moment, some leap of imagination and insight about space and time that led him to develop the theory of relativity. Old Archimedes got into a bathtub, and he was a chubby fellow, and so he displaced a fair amount of water as he sat in the tub, and he had this aha moment, a new understanding about volume and weight. Science is not just facts, and religion is not just blind belief. The point where science and religion meet is the moment of the aha, the epiphany, that little light bulb that goes off, a sudden awareness leading to a journey of discovery and a search for deeper understanding and deeper meaning. According to our faith tradition, when we open the Bible to Genesis 1, in the beginning, God said, God's first words were, "Let there be light," and there was light. And so we are at the beginning of a new calendar year. Every January, we're reminded about the light, about daylight growing just a little longer each day. And we Christians remember the Star of Bethlehem and the light that led the wise men, the scientists, on their journey of discovery based on a theory of that time that such a bright light meant an important birth, the birth of a king. Where would they expect to find such a king? Well, in a palace, or at least the people in the palace should know where and who he is. And so they go to the most important city, to the palace in the area, to explore that theory. And they are wrong. The book of faith, the scriptures we know as the Old Testament, prophesy about Bethlehem. And they are sent there to the baby Jesus. They are warned in a dream not to return to Herod with information about the child, but to go home by another way. Dreams and stars and light and wisdom and insight are all part of an adventurous journey full of unexpected happenings. That's how Christmas ends. But what do we choose to do with this story, and how has this Christmas journey this year changed you at this particular point in your history? One of the things I enjoyed this Christmas was the time retirement gives me to plan the family events. You know, I have to admit that I have inherited that love of making lists and planning from my mother. She loved to plan things. And so this year we had special craft projects for the children to make baskets that the Swedish people call julgranskorg. And they're meant to hang on the tree out of paper, and they're woven, they're two hearts together, and then they get filled with goodies on Christmas. So before Christmas, for our Lucia gathering, we made those. And then we also made julgranskaramell, these candy holders for holding the homemade caramels hanging on the children's tree. We had a Lucia procession this year with hem dresses, and we made Starboy hats, and we made Lucia rolls, and we made pepperkakor. All a lot of fun. And that was the before Christmas day. And then the Christmas itself, we were going to have a special smorgasbord, people bringing all their specialty foods. You know them, the lefse, the rice pudding, the whole 9 yards. And everything was going so smoothly that we were totally ready by Friday morning for our big Saturday gathering. And then on Friday afternoon, we got a phone call. The sudden surprise of a kind you'd rather not have. It was Gary's youngest daughter, Gretchen. Her husband, Jeff, had fallen on the ice on the way home from an after-work holiday party. He had hit his head. He'd been out cold. No one knew for how long. They were concerned about was there damage to his brain? Would he be okay? He had severe frostbite on his hands because he wasn't wearing gloves. And he was taken to Regents Hospital Trauma Center all the way from Lanesboro, Minnesota. So the reason they were calling, Gretchen said in a nice, strong, stiff upper lip Scandinavian fashion, the reason that I'm calling is we won't be able to be at the gathering. We're sorry we can't be there. The season spent in getting the gifts purchased, the house decorated, the baking done, the cards mailed, suddenly just came to one of those total stops. You know what that feels like, right? Just, whoa. We were strongly reminded this year that it's the relationships that make the Christmas, that presence is more important than presents. Or as I was trying to say to the kids, the greatest gift is the gift of each other, right? The gift that God gives is the gift of a child, not the gift of the stuff, even the really good stuff to eat, which is so very important to me. Jeff's gift was under the tree, but he couldn't receive those things. Instead, we were so thankful he was alert enough to hear his nephews and step-nieces enthusiastically sing Jingle Bells to him over the phone. I have to admit, I never thought of that as a hymn of praise before. A few of them stopped and brought get-well hand-drawn cards to the hospital, and while they were there, a pastor from Bethlehem Lutheran in Minneapolis stopped to visit and to pray with them. Our leftover Christmas ham went into soups for the freezer for good eating during Jeff's healing at home. The star, too, stopped suddenly. It stopped over the place where the child Jesus was. It was not the place the wise men expected to see a king. It was not in the palace of abundance with tons of stuff. It was not in the place of power and control where the army knew your every move. But it was in a humble and ordinary, unexpected place where the wise men saw a different kind of power, the power of a God who entered the ordinary struggle of human existence with the extraordinary love of a real child. Now that the presents have been put away and the decorations are down or about to be, has this Christmas made any real difference for you? Or did you just get through your list? Gifts, cards, foods. Daydream a minute now on this last day of Christmas. Imagine, is there some other way I can return from this Christmas season? And what is the new way God is leading you home? Because all of us are being led home to that eternal presence. And along the way, isn't that what we are longing for? To be at home, to be at peace with one another and with God. And don't we long to better understand ourselves, the world, and God? The Gospel of Matthew, in which this story of the wise men is told, was first written for Jewish Christians. People who knew the Messiah was promised to the Jews, and it was written to show that God's vision was not just for the well-being of one favored group of people, but for all people, for the sake of the whole world. I don't know about you and your family get-togethers, but one of the conversations during this holiday season is surrounded when the adults were getting together, especially the moms. We're talking about the shootings at Newtown. Very, very difficult for all of us, and certainly for the people most affected most directly in that terrible tragedy. But somebody said, one of the moms piped up and said, you know, I feel sort of strange to say this, but, you know, I got so worked up about these Newtown shootings, you know, and these children. She said, but, you know, every day, you know, they're the children who are in drive-by shootings, and there are the children that are being, you know, there was the shooting out in Colorado, and I didn't get that upset. And there was, you know, these different things that have happened, and she said, I didn't get as upset about that. Why am I so upset about this? And she said, well, you know, I have a 7-year-old daughter going to school in suburbia. That could be my kid. That could be my school. And so there's that sense, she said, you know, of which we identify with something when it really is about us. And, you know, she said, I do need to pay attention to these other things, and maybe we really need to look as a society about the whole gun thing. And a lot of us are thinking about that now and talking about that and becoming involved in signing petitions. And I hope you're thinking about that. I hope you're being active about that in some way, because something needs to be done to change things, not just for the well-being of the kids in suburbia, but for the well-being of children all over the world. When we look up and imagine the Star of Bethlehem guiding the wise men, We're invited to look beyond our own world and our own needs and our own limitations, and to be eager to learn new things and to see the neighbor with the eyes of God's love. Really got me last night when I arrived, and your dear Tina was working hard on the book. She was here, and she told me that, when this death happened of Greg Whitcomb, she got a call from Larissa Scott saying, you're supposed to be bringing a meal to us, Don't bring that to us. Take it over to the Whitcombs. They need it more than we do. To look beyond our own needs, to lift up our eyes, to be eager to see the neighbor with the eyes of God's love. A clergy colleague of mine, Roger Claxton, and his wife Connie were in a car accident out here on 61 in December. You remember the one there was the fatality out here. And they were in that chain of things, and their Toyota was totaled. Roger's jacket was so full of shards of glass. I don't know if any of you have been in the accidents now where your windshield just kind of shatters and breaks into all these tiny pieces. And then if you're going fast enough, if you hit fast enough, all that stuff gets embedded in your clothes. It doesn't cut your skin, but it gets all in your clothes. And so a hospital janitor said, you can't wear this coat, but I have an extra one in my locker that you can wear home. Asking some of the staff, Roger discovered that this often happens after accidents, and a few nice new coats would be welcome at the hospital here in Red Wing. So he bought some and brought them there. This basic need for a coat after his accident was his own epiphany. His aha moment based on both observation, facts, and loving concern, not just for his own need, but the needs of others. This is the season where the light of the love of Christ shines in unexpected places. Open your eyes. Maybe you'll have an aha moment when a child repeats that line on a trip. Are you there? Are we there yet? Perhaps you'll realize that the urge to arrive, to get there, can be impatient and childish, and it's important to look around and appreciate the gifts we receive, the discoveries to be made on the way. A friend of mine took his children to the Grand Canyon. After hearing many times on the road, "Are we there yet?" When they got there, one of the children looked at the Grand Canyon and said, "Dad, I don't see what the big deal is. It's just a big hole in the ground." He's right. It is a big hole in the ground. The child was observing, but boy, that child sure wasn't seeing, was he? The wise men began by observing with the naked eye what they could see. But it was only when they knelt down in wonder, when they gave away their gifts, when they were open to God's dream of going home by another way, when they were changed by the encounter with the child, it was only then they began to truly see. In the old way, they would have stayed home and held on to their wealth and built it up to serve their own kingdoms and their own families. In the new way, they took a risk. They went on an adventure based on faith, faith that they would be guided to where they needed to go, and they gave costly gifts to a strange infant king. The wise men had more knowledge and wealth than most. So do we in this country. In the Christmas story, the wise men's knowledge and wealth are drawn into the work of God in the world. In this great information age of ours, we have much knowledge, much scientific know-how and wealth. But how will we be drawn into the work of God in the world? In Jamaica, in the Sudan, in El Salvador, here in Red Wing. What are the gifts you bring to the one in need? Who is the person in which you will see the face of Jesus? Who is the person who will see the face and love of Jesus in you? Expect to be amazed. Expect God's aha moments. in this new year. Amen. The hymn of response.